He was a billionaire who never let anyone cross the walls of his life, a man feared in business and envied in Chicago's elite circles. Yet on one stormy Christmas Eve, a young housekeeper dared to break the silence with a question that stopped him cold, and against every instinct he followed her into a world he had never known. What happened behind the door of that small yellow house was not just dinner, but a secret that would unravel his carefully built empire of loneliness. Stay with me because nothing about this night ends the way you expect. Michael Pierce had grown accustomed to silence, but on Christmas Eve that silence cut deeper than ever. His mansion in Chicago's Gold Coast stood like a fortress above the city lights, its polished marble floors, echoing with nothing but his own footsteps. Year after year, the same ritual employees leaving early for family gatherings, his business partner Mark Reynolds calling with an invitation, he would politely decline, and finally a glass of expensive scotch to keep him company until midnight struck. But that night something shifted. Emma Rivera, the new housekeeper, lingered by the doorway. She was supposed to leave like everyone else, vanish into the night with a polite "Merry Christmas, Mr. Pierce." Instead, she hesitated, her hands clasped in front of her, her eyes darting to the glass of scotch on his desk, to his loosened tie, to the empty office decorated more by shadows than by holiday cheer. "Will you be spending the night alone, sir?" she asked softly. Her voice carried both fear of overstepping and a tenderness that startled him. Michael forced a businessman's smile, the same one he had used to negotiate billion-dollar deals. "I have work to finish." The quiet helps. But even he could hear the hollowness in his excuse. Emma bit her lip as if weighing whether to retreat or take a leap. And then, like a spark in the dark, she blurted out, "Would you come to dinner at my place just for tonight?" No one should spend Christmas alone. The word stunned him. No employee had ever dared cross that invisible line. For a moment, his instinct was to dismiss her kindly but firmly. Yet something in her eyes disarmed him. There was no calculation, no hidden agenda, none of the hunger for status he was used to reading in the faces of women at charity galas. Only honesty. "I appreciate the offer," he said at last, his voice guarded, "but that wouldn't be appropriate. Enjoy your evening with your family." "I don't have family here," Emma admitted, her shoulders softening. "I came from New Mexico 6 months ago. I rent a small place in Logan Square. It's nothing fancy, but there's food and company." Michael froze. He had always imagined her slipping out after work to a warm home filled with laughter, perhaps parents or younger siblings. The reality unsettled him. She was just as alone as he was. She scribbled quickly on a notepad by the door and slid it onto his desk. Culture 87, Acacia Street. Yellow house with a jasmine bush out front, in case you change your mind. And then she was gone, leaving Michael staring at the note scotch burning his throat as he replayed her words. The city twinkled outside his window. Families gathered. Children tore open gifts. Couples laughed in the street. And he, Michael Pierce, head of one of Chicago's largest construction empires, was exactly where he had been for the last 20 Christmases alone. But tonight the loneliness felt different. It wasn't just an emptiness he had grown used to. It was a void sharpened by the memory of her eyes. By 8:47 p.m., he was pacing in his study. The note sat on his desk like a dare. His black Bentley waited in the garage. Logic screamed at him to stay put, but impulse, something he had long buried beneath layers of discipline, won. Without changing from his soaked Italian suit, he grabbed his keys and left. The security guard blinked in shock when Michael told him he would drive himself. No chauffeur, no bodyguards. Just him out into the night like an ordinary man. The city streets were nearly empty. Christmas lights hung from lampposts glowing through a light drizzle that quickly turned into a hard rain. He followed the GPS out of the wealthy enclaves, past boutiques and glittering condos, into narrower streets lined with aging brick apartments and corner stores still open for last-minute shoppers. By the time he reached Acacia Street, he felt foolish. What was he doing? Pulling up in front of a modest yellow house in Logan Square, his Bentley looked like it had landed on the wrong planet. He nearly turned the wheel to leave when he saw the jasmine bush by the door, the faint glow of colored Christmas lights in the window, and a figure moving inside. Emma. She was alone, setting the table, humming faintly, as if to fill the silence that surrounded her. Michael cut the engine. Rain pounded harder, plastering his hair to his forehead as he stepped out. Every instinct screamed this was madness. The tabloids would devour the story if they ever found out. But in that moment, staring at the modest house, he realized something terrifying. He didn't care. He walked up to the green front door, rehearsing excuses in his mind. Perhaps he'd say he was just passing by, that he wanted to drop off a gift. Perhaps he'd make it quick, 10 minutes at most, then retreat to his marble and glass isolation. Instead, he pressed the doorbell. "Who is it?" Emma's voice came from inside. "Michael," he answered, his voice lower than intended. For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable. The door swung open. Emma stood there in jeans and a simple red blouse, her hair down, her surprise softening into a smile that radiated more warmth than the entire mansion he had just left behind. "You came," she whispered, half in disbelief. Her home smelled of garlic onions and something else, something comforting he couldn't place at first. A modest tree glowed in the corner, decorated with ornaments that didn't match but carried personality. Everything about the room felt alive, unlike the sterile perfection of his world. Michael hesitated on the threshold. Crossing it felt like crossing into a different life. But as rain dripped from his suit and she pressed a towel into his hands with casual kindness, he stepped inside. And in that small yellow house on a quiet Chicago street, Michael Pierce's carefully constructed life began to crack. He didn't know it yet, but nothing would ever be the same. Do you think Michael made the right choice stepping into Emma's world? Michael Pierce felt strangely out of place in Emma Rivera's modest yellow house. Yet something about the warmth inside disarmed him. The scent of garlic and onions lingered in the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of cinnamon. A small Christmas tree stood in the corner, decorated with mismatched ornaments that seemed to carry stories of their own. The contrast from his sterile mansion in the Gold Coast could not have been greater, and it unsettled him in ways he hadn't expected. Emma pressed a towel into his hands without ceremony, as if they had known each other for years rather than a month of formal greetings in his house. "You'll catch a cold if you stay like that," she said. He nearly laughed at the absurdity. He owned dozens of custom suits, yet here he was, standing awkwardly in the living room of a woman who earned more in a month than he spent on a single tie, holding a towel like a boy caught in the rain. "I should have called," he muttered, unsure why he even came. "If you had called, I wouldn't have believed you," Emma replied with a shrug. "Now sit down. Dinner's almost ready." Her confidence surprised him. At the mansion, she was reserved, polite, almost invisible. Here in her own space, she was different, more alive, more genuine. He sat at the small wooden table, noticing the frayed edges of the tablecloth and the single candle flickering at the center. She moved gracefully around the tiny kitchen, humming to herself. Soon she placed steaming dishes before him, baked cod with potatoes, rice, and a simple salad. He hadn't eaten homemade food in years. Everything in his world came plated with artistic precision at Michelin-starred restaurants. Yet the aroma stirred something in him. Memories of his mother's cooking long before wealth became his armor. They ate in silence for a few minutes until Emma asked, "So, what's it like being Michael Pierce?" He frowned. "What do you mean?" "You know," she said with a half smile, "the businessman in magazines, the bachelor. With the perfect suits, the man everyone seems to admire from a distance." He almost choked on his wine. "You've read those articles, impossible not to." "Your face takes up half the page," she teased. "But sitting here with wet hair and a towel, you don't look much like that man." Michael felt heat creep up his neck. "Those articles are PR. They sell an image, not the truth." "And what's the truth?" she asked, her eyes steady on his. For a moment he wanted to retreat behind the walls he had built for decades, but the words slipped out before he could stop them. "The truth is that it's lonely, more than anyone thinks." Emma nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. "My grandmother used to say the world confuses wealth with worth. That's why people chase the wrong things." He studied her face. She spoke without judgment, without agenda. Her words cut deeper than any criticism he had ever heard. "And what brought you here to Chicago?" he asked, trying to shift the focus. "My grandmother passed away early this year," she said softly. "She raised me after my parents died in a car accident. I sold the small inn she left me in New Mexico and came here to start fresh. Thought the city would give me a chance." Michael stared at her, feeling a strange kinship. They were both orphans of a kind, carrying scars behind polished facades. He told her almost reluctantly about losing his parents young, about the pressure of taking over the company when he was barely out of college. "That must have been hard," Emma said gently. It was survival, he admitted, swirling the wine in his glass. I built walls. I thought success would protect me. But sometimes I wonder if I built a prison instead. Her gaze met his. Prisons can be unlocked, you know. The words lingered in the air between them. After dinner, they sat with coffee as rain tapped against the window. Michael found himself telling stories he hadn't shared in years about fishing with his father, about the peaches his mother grew in their backyard before the mansion, about the dreams he had long before they were buried beneath contracts and mergers. Emma listened, sometimes laughing, sometimes quiet, but always present. The hours slipped away unnoticed. At midnight, fireworks exploded in the distance, faint pops from Navy Pier echoing across the city. Emma raised her mug in a toast. To new beginnings, she said. Michael clinked his cup against hers, surprised to hear himself answer, to new beginnings. Later, when the rain turned into a storm, Emma insisted he stay in her small guest room, rather than risk the slick roads. He resisted, but the sincerity in her voice made it impossible to refuse. As he lay in the unfamiliar bed wearing a borrowed t-shirt, he felt more at peace than he had in years. When morning came, the smell of coffee and cinnamon roused him. Emma was in the kitchen making rabanadas, a simple holiday breakfast. She looked up and smiled. Merry Christmas. For the first time in decades, Michael didn't feel the need to hide behind his title or his wealth. He was simply a man in a small house sharing coffee with someone who saw him, not his empire, not his money, but him. And that realization terrified him as much as it thrilled him. Do you feel Emma was brave for inviting Michael? Despite the risk, Michael Pierce had never known a Christmas morning like this one. No servants rushing through polished hallways, no curated spreads laid out by caterers, no endless emails pulling him back to work. Instead, he sat at a tiny table in Logan Square, sipping strong coffee while Emma Rivera slid a plate of warm rabanadas in front of him, the sweet scent of cinnamon filling the air. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of her voice as she moved around the kitchen. It felt ordinary, almost shockingly so, and yet extraordinary because it was real. He caught himself staring at her, at the ease in her movements, the way her hair slipped loose from its knot, and something stirred inside him that he hadn't let himself feel in years. But with the feeling came fear. Fear of what this meant, fear of the walls crumbling too quickly. He told himself this was temporary, a holiday detour before he returned to his fortress in the Gold Coast. Yet when Emma sat across from him, smiling as though his presence alone was enough, he knew he couldn't lie to himself much longer. After breakfast, she asked if he had plans for the day. He almost said yes out of habit, meetings, projects, responsibilities, but for the first time, he admitted he didn't. Emma suggested a walk through Lincoln Park to see the Christmas decorations. Something inside him hesitated. What if someone recognized him, saw him with her whispered stories that would spread through Chicago's elite circles by morning? But another part of him, stronger than the fear, wanted to see her world beyond these walls. So they went. Lincoln Park was alive with families strolling, children tugging new bikes, and skates couples sharing hot chocolate on benches. Michael felt awkward at first, out of place in his casual jeans and jacket, but Emma walked beside him with such ease that the tension began to fade. She bought popcorn from a vendor, laughed when the wind blew her hair across her face, pointed out the ducks drifting across the lake, as though each small thing mattered. He realized how rarely he noticed simple beauty anymore. They sat together on a bench watching the families. Emma's voice was quiet when she said, I used to dream about Christmas like this. My grandmother and I never had much, but she always told me the real gift was being together. I guess I didn't understand until she was gone. Michael turned to her, words catching in his throat. He wanted to tell her that he understood too well that wealth had filled every corner of his life except the one that mattered most. Instead, he draped his jacket over her shoulders when he saw her shiver, and the gratitude in her eyes told him she understood without the words. As the afternoon faded, they returned to her house for leftovers. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp and clear. Inside, Michael felt reluctant to let the day end. He had work waiting, calls unanswered, a life carefully constructed, like glass walls around him. But sitting at her table, listening to her laugh about some childhood memory in New Mexico, he realized the glass walls had already cracked. That night, when he finally returned to his mansion, the silence hit harder than ever. The house felt hollow, stripped of life. For the first time, Michael admitted to himself that he didn't want to go back to the way things were. The next few days unfolded like a secret rhythm between them. At work, he reduced his meetings, delegated more than he ever had. At the mansion, he found excuses to linger in the kitchen to ask Emma questions that had nothing to do with chores. She in turn left books lying where she knew he'd see them, made dishes from her grandmother's recipes and insisted he try them, laughed at his dry jokes in a way no one else dared. It was unspoken, this fragile thread pulling them closer. Neither dared name it. But when New Year's Eve arrived, Michael couldn't keep the boundary intact any longer. He invited her to a gala at the Chicago Club, a charity event he attended every year. At first she refused, worried she wouldn't belong, but when she walked out of her little yellow house in a navy dress that shimmered softly under the streetlights, he knew she belonged anywhere she chose to stand. The room fell silent when they entered. Eyes turned, whispers followed. Some looked at Emma with curiosity, others with disdain, but Michael didn't flinch. For once, he didn't care about reputation or headlines. He only cared about the woman whose hand trembled slightly in his, though her chin stayed high. When an influential socialite pressed with condescending questions about Emma's background, Michael bristled, but Emma held her own with dignity. And for the first time, he saw how strong she truly was, not in spite of where she came from, but because of it. As midnight drew near, they stepped out onto the terrace to watch fireworks over Chicago. The city glowed beneath them, bursts of light painting the sky. Michael felt his heart racing, his carefully rehearsed composure gone. He turned to her and spoke words he never thought he would, that she had changed him, that her kindness had stripped away years of loneliness, that she had reminded him what it meant to be seen as a man, not a fortune. The countdown began 10, 9, 8. He confessed he was falling for her as the clock struck midnight. And when fireworks exploded, he kissed her, tentative at first, then with a depth that left them both breathless. For a terrible second, she didn't move, and he feared he had made a mistake. But then she wrapped her arms around his neck, kissing him back with the same tenderness she'd shown in everything she did. The world fell away, the fireworks, the music, the gossiping crowd. There was only them, and for once Michael felt free. After the gala, after whispers and knowing looks, they didn't speak of what the future might bring. They only knew they had crossed a line they could never uncross. In the days that followed, they began carefully talking about what it meant about Emma's choice to leave her job at the mansion, so that what grew between them could be real, equal, honest. Michael offered to help her find something new, not with money but with introductions. She accepted only his support, not his wealth. That integrity made him respect her all the more. As winter gave way to a new year, Michael Pierce, the man who once spent every Christmas alone, began to discover what home really meant. It wasn't marble halls or a penthouse view of the city. It was a yellow house with a jasmine bush in Logan Square, a woman who spoke truth without fear, and the feeling of being seen for the first time in decades. He had spent his life building towers of glass and steel, but in Emma Rivera's presence, he was finally building something that mattered. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe Michael and Emma's story shows that love can break down even the highest walls, yes or no? Do you feel this ending gave you hope? Drop the number 100 in the comments. Tell me which country you're watching from, and don't forget to share this video so more people can feel the power of this story.